Welcome to Fun Facts Daily, your source for just the good stuff. Monday through Friday, we're bringing fun facts and news you can use, all carefully curated to uplift and inform. So give yourself a break, relax, and learn something awesome in just a few minutes every day. Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Wood. It's back to school season, so this week I'm doing a series of episodes focusing on things that might be interesting to teachers and students getting ready for a great school year. I did a similar themed week last year, including an episode on pencils, which you can find linked in the show notes, but today we'll be learning all about erasers, the little pink bits at the end of your pencils that you probably never thought too much about, but they're actually surprisingly fascinating. Now, as always, before we get into the facts, let's warm up our brains with a little challenge to see if you can tell fact from fiction. Consider this. Some say that before the invention of the modern rubber erasers, writers and artists used rolled up pieces of crustless bread to remove their pencil marks. People would supposedly carry chunks of moist bread in their pencil cases to wipe off mistakes. What do you think? Did people really use edible erasers, or does this just seem a bit hard to swallow? We'll find out at the end of the episode. Now for your word of the day. Our word for today is vulcanization. That's vulcanization. Vulcanization refers to the chemical process that converts natural rubber into a durable, usable material. Natural rubber in its raw state reacts poorly to temperature changes, becoming sticky in the heat and brittle in the cold. In 1839, Charles Goodyear discovered that adding sulfur to rubber and applying high heat altered the chemical structure of the material. This process cross-linked the polymer chains, creating a stable substance that could maintain its shape and texture. The word vulcanization comes from Roman mythology. A 19th century inventor named William Brockton suggested naming the process after Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and the forge, as the application of intense heat is the critical component of the chemical reaction. Without the process of vulcanization, early erasers would have melted in a warm classroom or shattered during the winter. And today, vulcanization is still essential in manufacturing countless rubber goods all around the world. Time for your daily high five, our top 5 fun facts about erasers. Number 1. Joseph Priestley invented the eraser and coined the term rubber because rubbing it over a paper removed marks. The English chemist Joseph Priestley made several scientific discoveries during the 18th century. He's most famous for isolating oxygen and inventing carbonated water, which gave rise to the soda industry. But this episode isn't fun facts about gases, so I'm going to focus on another of his discoveries, rubber's erasing abilities. Rubber trees are native to the Amazon River basin in South America. Now they're grown widely around the tropics, but for hundreds of years, natural rubber has been harvested by tapping, where workers use a special hooked knife to shave a thin, downward spiral groove into the bark of a mature rubber tree. This shallow cut allows the milky latex sap to slowly ooze out and run down the spiral into a collection cup without causing any permanent damage to the tree itself. Now, in April of 1770, Priestley had a bit of this imported plant gum from South America in his lab, and he noticed that it could easily lift graphite marks off his paper. He called the substance rubber because the physical rubbing action required to remove the graphite. Before Priestley coined the name rubber, it was referred to as caoutchouc, which was based on the indigenous people's term caoutchouc, which means weeping wood. But the name rubber went along with an exciting new invention, and it's stuck around since the 18th century. Number 2. The Supreme Court actually had to weigh in on the idea of attaching erasers to pencils. For decades, pencils and erasers were sold separately. Then, in 1858, a man named Hyman Lipman got a patent for attaching an eraser to the end of a wooden pencil. Lipman sold his patent for $100,000 to Joseph Reckendorfer. That would be the equivalent of around $3.3 million today. Reckendorfer began manufacturing pencils with erasers, but another pencil manufacturer, Eberhard Faber, produced a similar item, so Reckendorfer filed a lawsuit for patent infringement. When the lawsuit ultimately reached the U.S. Supreme Court in 1875, the justices ruled that the original patent was invalid. They said that combining two existing tools didn't constitute a new invention, as neither tool changed the function of the other. So any manufacturer was able to produce pencils with attached erasers without paying royalties, and that kind of became the standard ever since. Number 3. Most modern erasers aren't made of natural rubber. Manufacturers relied on natural rubber from trees to produce erasers for over a century. But in the mid-20th century, companies began testing alternative materials to improve performance and reduce costs. The industry shifted production towards synthetic petroleum-based materials, mainly vinyl and various plastics. Today, the standard pink erasers found in schools are almost entirely synthetic. Now, if you're wondering why pink is the standard for erasers, that's basically an accident of history. In the early 20th century, the Eberhard Faber Pencil Company began mixing Italian pumice into their rubber. The pumice helped the rubber gently scrub graphite off paper more effectively, but the specific Italian pumice the company sourced just happened to be pink. Their erasers were so popular, the company launched a standalone version in 1916 called the Pink Pearl, which they marketed to the expanding U.S. school system. Then, because those Pink Pearl erasers were so popular, other erasers were dyed pink to match people's expectations. Today, engineers favor vinyl because natural rubber degrades over time, becoming brittle and prone to smudging graphite across the page. Vinyl compounds maintain their flexibility and structural integrity for years without drying out. The vinyl also removes marks with less pressure, which prevents damage to the underlying paper fibers. But even though vinyl erasers could come in any color, the vast majority are still dyed pink. Number 4. Erasers remove most marks through adhesion. Basically, they're stickier than the paper. Erasers don't destroy the graphite marks, they lift them off the writing surface. When you write with a pencil, the microscopic ridges and valleys called the tooth of the paper create friction that causes the tip of the pencil to break. Graphite particles become trapped in the fibers of the paper. Now, the big idea with erasers is they're made with a material that's more sticky than the paper, so the graphite or other materials will come off the paper and stick to the eraser. As the eraser moves across the page, the graphite transfers from the paper to the eraser. Friction also plays a role in this adhesive transfer process. Rubbing the eraser against the paper generates heat, and as the rubber in the eraser gets warmer, it becomes a little bit more soft and sticky. Perhaps the most brilliant bit, though, is that erasers are made to be a little bit brittle too, so as you use it, the outer layer of the eraser gets covered in graphite and then crumbles and breaks off, leaving clean rubber for the next time you need it. And here's a little bonus fact for you. Erasers work with more than just pencils. The adhesion principles work with a number of different materials, including charcoal, chalk, pastels, and crayons. Basically, any tool that makes marks by leaving material sitting on the surface can be erased, but materials like inks and watercolors that soak into the fibers can't be. And our fifth and final fun fact for today: erasable pens use heat to make the ink disappear. Erasers couldn't remove traditional pen ink because the ink soaks into the paper fibers instead of resting on top. But in 2007, the Pilot Corporation came up with a new line of erasable pens using a special thermo-sensitive ink. The ink has 3 chemical components that react to temperature changes. The pens have a hard rubber or plastic tip on the other end, which serves as an erasing tool. But it's not like a normal eraser that grabs onto the ink. When you rub the hard tip over the ink, the friction generates heat on the paper. Once the temperature reaches 140 degrees Fahrenheit, a chemical reaction causes the ink to become transparent. The ink stays embedded in the paper fibers, but it's no longer visible. Interestingly, though, if you put that paper in freezing temperatures, the chemical process will reverse and the ink reappears. So it seems like erasable pens could be cool tools for anyone wanting to use disappearing ink to send secret messages or experiment with magic tricks. Now for some news you can use. When you think about it, erasers aren't just tools for fixing your writing or drawing. They can also be great cleaning tools. For example, you can use a standard eraser to remove scuff marks from suede shoes or jackets. If you have a dry stain or dirt mark on suede, just gently rub an eraser over it. It works because suede is a textured surface that traps dirt particles. Liquid cleaners often push the dirt deeper into the hide and leave permanent water spots, but the dry, adhesive properties of the eraser will lift dirt particles out of that trap without introducing moisture. A quick brush afterwards will restore the texture, leaving the suede looking clean and uniform. But suede isn't the only thing you can use an eraser to clean. It's also great for removing that adhesive residue after you peel off a sticker from a hard surface. Instead of scraping with your fingernail or using harsh chemicals, just use a vinyl or rubber eraser on the sticky spot. The friction generated by the rubbing motion warms up the residual glue, while the eraser material grabs the adhesive particles. As the eraser sheds tiny shavings, it binds the glue into small clumps that easily roll off the surface. It can work wonders taking sticky marks off glass, plastic, and book covers without scratching the underlying material or leaving a greasy stain behind. And finally, the moment you've been waiting for. At the beginning of the episode, I asked, did people really use bread to remove pencil marks before the standard rubber eraser? That's a fact. Before rubber erasers became widely available, crustless bread was the standard erasing tool for engineers, artists, and students. A British engineer named Edward Nairne is credited with creating the first commercial rubber eraser in 1770. According to historical records, Nairne accidentally picked up a piece of natural rubber instead of his usual piece of bread to erase a mistake. He noticed that the rubber worked significantly better and began selling cubes of rubber from his shop. Bread erasers quickly fell out of fashion, which was a positive change as the bread would frequently rot and attract pests if left in a desk. And early in the episode, you might have noticed that I said Priestley discovered the erasing capabilities of rubber, and here the story is that Nairne accidentally picked up a piece of rubber and discovered its usefulness. Both men made their discoveries in 1770. From what I've read, Priestley did it first, but Nairne was the first to bring it to market. Now, I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about erasers with me today, and be sure to tune in every weekday for even more fun facts. Fun Facts Daily is an Airwave Media podcast. It was written, recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Kyle Wood. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with me. Be sure to follow Fun Facts Daily on your favorite podcast app so you can keep the good stuff coming your way every day. And if you like the show, please do me a favor and leave a kind rating, review, or just tell your friends about it.